I was coaching college basketball, actually. I was driving buses of college basketball players, taking land calls, all these other things. I was grinding it out. Like, we have a nurse, I think she works like 4 12-hour shifts, and she's doing this business. When I was doing land as a side hustle, when I was working at 9 to 5, you just had to find pockets in the day to grind. We didn't have 8 hours a day to run this business, where we knew we had to find something where we could be very, very efficient with our time, and there was a high upside. It's not the sexiest real estate around for sure. Shelby, who we interviewed on our podcast, quit her job in like 4 or 5 months. She was working full time, and then I think she sent us a DM or something on Discord or message us, and she's like, yeah, I just quit my job. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Apke. Today in this episode, I'm going to be talking about land investing / land flipping versus other side hustles. And in this episode, to preface what I'm about to go over, I'm going to be as unbiased as possible. Obviously, we are big in land investing, but I have also done a ton of other side hustles, built other businesses, everything like that. But what we want to talk about in this episode is a lot of people, it's such a hot thing right now, a hot topic, is people trying to get out of their 9 to 5 jobs, which I respect. There's a ton of grind that goes into it. I was doing land investing while I was doing a 9 to 5 job. I was coaching college basketball, actually. I was driving buses of college basketball players, taking land calls, all these other things. I was grinding it out. So we're going to talk all about that, what it looks like going from a 9 to 5 job to land investing, doing it together at the same time. Is it feasible? And then talking about other side hustles as well. What is the difference in land investing versus these? What are the pros? What are the cons? How do they really compare? So, like I said to start, I've done a lot of entrepreneurship ventures. I've tried to flip other things. Like, obviously, I ended up flipping land. I flipped items off of auction websites. We've started a juicing company. Actually, that was one of Daniel and my's ventures, was a fresh juice company at a farmer's market that we started. So we've done, I don't want to say it all, obviously. I've worked for my dad's business that he's owned for 35 years. So I've done that kind of stuff in the management aspect with that and grown from there for sure. But the one thing, when I was doing a 9 to 5 job and I was trying to start other businesses, so you're working 9 to 5, you're working 8 hours, and let's say you're being as honest with those 8 hours as possible, you're not doing other things during those 8 hours. You are trying to be as efficient as possible when you get off the clock for that. So what side hustle is going to provide you the most value for your time, essentially, after hours? So one way to do it is waking up early in the morning, obviously getting work done then. You can also do it after work, which when I was doing land as a side hustle, when I was working in 9 to 5, or it wasn't typical 9 to 5, I was coaching college basketball. But when I was doing that, you just had to find pockets in the day to grind. Like, not necessarily in the day, but like whenever you're not working, like you need to find some time to get stuff done and be efficient with your time. And the people who are the most successful in land, who are in a 9 to 5 right now, do that. They work at night. They're not complaining. They're still active in our calls. They're active in our community. And a lot of people you really don't know. Like, we have a nurse who works, I think she works 4 12 hours. I don't know exactly. I think she works like 4 12-hour shifts, and she's doing this business. Like, there are so many different situations and of people who are doing this with not just a normal 9 to 5, like with working more than 40 hours a week. And you can fit time into this for sure. Going into other business models, like the biggest thing that we looked for when we were looking at potential businesses, and then when we started land investing, was opportunity for our time. Like, what can we put, I don't want to say minimal time, but what can we get the biggest output for the least input, essentially? Like Daniel and myself, when we started land investing, we both had full-time jobs, and maybe we could do 2 hours a day, maybe we could do 90 minutes a day, maybe some hours 3 hours a day, or some days 3 hours a day. We would fit it in. Like, we would figure a way to fit it in, no doubt about it. But we didn't have 8 hours a day to run this business. We're not trying to start a traditional business when we started this, where we knew we had to find something where we could be very, very efficient with our time, and there was a high upside. And that is what drew us to land, the opportunity in land. It's not the sexiest real estate around for sure. It's not like the most talked about, which we love. Like, I always say it with coaching students, when you're picking counties, even when you're choosing an area to target, go away from the grain. Go away from other land investors. Go away from markets where you see everyone doing deals. Go away from the grain. And that's kind of what brought Daniel and myself into land. Like we were just going across grain. We see everyone doing wholesaling houses, everyone house flipping, everyone rental properties, whatever it is, Burr, all this other stuff, but it wasn't really building true businesses, and it was not possible with a 9 to 5 job in our mind. So like I said, the one main thing people are looking for when they're starting a side hustle, when they already have a 9 to 5 job, is something, and I assume the people who are listening to this in the same position, like you want to, if you're working 5 to 9 p.m. or something like that on a side hustle, you want to be as efficient in this business or in whatever business as possible. And you want the output, the potential output of money that can bring you back as high, and something that can also potentially get you out of your 9 to 5 business for sure. So you can compare this to drop shipping. Drop shipping is something that's been around for a while. Daniel started and sold a drop shipping company. That's a really good comparison business that isn't in real estate because a lot of people are in it. It's very scalable. You can make a lot of money, but it is a grind in terms of that, like finding suppliers. It's when, if you talk to Daniel about it, if you talk to other drop shippers about it, it is something that is going to take more time than what land is. But getting into what land doesn't really provide, what a land flipping business doesn't really provide that maybe a drop shipping company does is typically, I'm not saying it can't happen, but typically land flipping companies are not going to be a sellable asset. So when I say a sellable asset, you build a land flipping company to $3 million of profit per year, whatever the number is. If that is a drop shipping company, if that's a whatever company, that business might be worth 20, $25 million. You can structure with land. I don't want to act like it's not possible because it is possible, but you need your systems, you need your people, you need everything to be on absolute point because this isn't the biggest industry. And to be able to sell something like this to someone, when you sell an asset, when you sell a business to someone, it needs to be plug and play. Like it cannot be, if I were to sell my land flipping business, the business could not be relying on me. It would have to be relying on the people around me who aren't involved in the sale of business, essentially, who are employees, who are managers, who are whatever. For this, you would need an acquisition strategy or an acquisition manager, a transaction coordinator, all these other positions to make it a well oiled machine for a potential buyer. But like I said, I don't want to say land flipping company is not a sellable asset. It's much less sellable than a lot of other business types. So that's like the one con, I guess, when you're talking about this business is it's difficult to sell. I don't know if there's been any acquisitions in terms of typical land flipping businesses. I don't want to say it's impossible because I don't think it's impossible. It's just work in terms of getting that lined up, and it's not going to be as sellable of an asset as some other business types. Um, but let's kind of get in what's possible for land investing. So let's say you're in this position right now. You're listening to this episode, and you have a 9 to 5 and it's taking up, like it takes up 9 to 5. There's nothing, like you are working 9 to 5 at that business, and you can work an hour before work, an hour after work, maybe an hour and a half after work. Sometimes you have a family, kids. A lot of people come in with these situations. All those are, I don't want to say excuses, but it's external mindset things that like you just a reason why not. Like anyone. We've had all different types of people who have joined, who have started this business and made 6, 7 figures. People who have 4 kids, people who have no kids, bachelors, everyone in between, grandparents. There isn't a person or a type that really is the most successful in this business. But if you have a 9 to 5 job, you're able to commit an hour to 2 hours a day. What is possible? I mean, it's just unbelievable some of the stories you hear. Like the greatest thing about this business is the margins. You can send 2,000 mailers a month. You can send 3,000 mailers a month and profit $20,000 without a doubt. Like it is a realistic thing. You're going to have your acquisitions. You're probably going to have an answering service. So you have someone else answering the phone when you're at work, and then you make those calls back after work. A lot of people, one of our most successful students, he pretty much makes all his calls to sellers back around 5:30 p.m., more in the evening than the middle of the day. And it's a good strategy. You just need to find a way to get these people on the phone. And the biggest thing is if they don't answer at 5:30, like you need to have a sequence where you can touch base with them a different way. So you can get a phone call set up so you can actually close these sellers. But like I said, if you have an hour before work, 2 hours after work, something like that, it doesn't need to be 3 hours a day by any means. But if you can put an hour to 2 hours a day in consistently, that's the key. You can't do this Monday and Wednesday, and then the other days you don't do anything. You need to be consistent in this business to make it work. And like we've always talked about, one of the biggest things is continued education, being active in our calls, continuing being active in our Discord, continuing to learn this business as you're growing with it. And we've had people, Shelby, who we interviewed previously, on our podcast. Shelby quit her job in like 4 or 5 months. She was working full time. And then I think she sent us a DM or something on Discord or message us. And she's like, yeah, I just quit my job because of this. We have a $300,000 profit deal in the pipeline. We have some other deals. We feel good about this. It was a leap. Like it wasn't like a guaranteed thing for sure. And she was in a position where she could take a leap of faith and she believed in this business. And as far as I know, it's worked out to this point. But 3, 4, 5, 6 months, depending on your expenses, depending on all that other stuff, there's a chance you could leave your job for this business. There are people doing it every single, I don't want to say day, but every month we hear stories of people quitting and it just continually happens. But it is that commitment. When you have that 9 to 5 job, you need to commit to this business outside of that job. Like you need to be willing to invest in this business, time, money, and energy. And that's when great things can happen. And that short term sacrifice of maybe 6 months of really grinding, you have a 9 to 5, you're doing this, you're taking calls, you might be losing a little bit of sleep, whatever it is, that sacrifice is worth it. I'm telling you, like it was hard. Now, college basketball coaching isn't for 40 hours a week. College basketball coaching is 60, 70, 80 hours a week during the season. And that's when I was doing this. I was doing this during the season. I didn't care. I was just making it happen. It was difficult balancing because college basketball is such weird times in terms of when we were going out to recruit, when we were on the road playing games, when we had practice was random times. We would practice on holidays. It was every day. Like it was 7 days a week, but it just cannot be. I had a kid at that time. My wife was pregnant at the time. So there were no circumstances that were absolutely perfect. But that short-term sacrifice for the long-term gain is 100% worth it. And that's what some of you just need to get in that mindset. I know my previous episode was just about mindset, but it is not that long of a sacrifice where you're doing both at the same time. And you can realistically, if you're consistent in this business for 6 months, you could be a full time land flipper 6 months from now. Anyone listening to this could be a full time land flipper 6 months from now. I want to end it there, though, guys. Like I said, this episode is all about land investing versus other side hustles with 9 to 5 jobs, all that other stuff. Where should you put your time and energy? That's up to you to make that call. If you just want to stay in your 9 to 5 the next 30, 40 years, great. I respect that. I have no problem with that. But it's not like you don't want to be in your 9 to 5 and complaining about that 9 to 5. If you're that person, find a solution. Like I talked in the last episode, it's not a problem, it's a puzzle. Find a solution to that puzzle. Other than that, thank you so much, guys. If you guys have not already, if you guys are listening on Apple or Spotify, please share this with a friend. Hit the share button, share it on your social media. If you haven't subscribed on our YouTube, Apke Brothers YouTube, please subscribe. It really helps. We do live calls every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. Other than that, thank you so much. We'll see you next time.
As always, thank you for joining. Please do us a huge favor and like and subscribe our YouTube channel and share this with a friend. It really means the world to Ron and I, but more importantly, it could help change the life of someone else. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next episode.